village is going to be. You might find a lot of drums and xylophones everywhere.
Yes.
So there's quite a lot of things coming up. I think the most challenging part of it now still is the fact that
Welcome to the Creative Industry Talk. My name is Eddie Okela. And how are you all doing? Are you still creating stuff? Are you making sure that the stuff you're creating is reaching the market? Do you have some partnerships? Are you creating relationships that is going to make sure that your product gets to the market? If not, today on the program is what we bring you, the discussion on managing partnerships and relationships all across. But of course, we need to go global. Are you creating what will go global? And if it's yes, then today's program is for you. Welcome to the Creative Industry Talk. My name is Eddie Okela, and in the studio is Faizo Chiwewa, who is back and fresh from Baimba Foundation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We are still bongering. And how was your week?
It was good. First of all, I would like to congratulate the, what was it yesterday? The International,
The International Day of Fresh Freedom.
Press freedom.
Yes.
So all the press people, congratulations, those who are free.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's really good to kind of remind ourselves
Yeah.
that some rights and values are very important to certain segments of society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I could not agree with you more. Faisal, welcome to the program. Creative Industry Talk exists for us to share a lot more in our thinking space, and of course in the space that we create things for those who consume, as well as entertainment. And of course today we are starting this talk with a very interesting discussion. First of all, I would like to take Faisal to cultural and creative industry. Culture and the creative industry in Uganda. How is the space, the landscape today, having given the background of COVID-19 in the past?
I think it's getting interesting. As we've been talking over time, you realize that more and more new things are coming up. You saw the Operation Wealth Creation launched their new Yuga Tunes. So that means that they are trying to also offer some opportunities for music online online musicians, so that they can earn from their money. I don't know how it's going to work, so I've not really dug into it yet, but I heard a lot of buzz about it, and some of the local musicians are very excited. But on the other hand, the Ministry of Culture, or the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, is working with the European Union on developing a study on the film industry in Uganda, and they are trying to see what they can do, what areas need to be invested in, as well as there is a music village that is coming up in Lubowa by the government. So I'm curious how that this village is going to be. You might find a lot of drums and xylophones everywhere.
Yes.
So there's quite a lot of things coming up. I think the most challenging part of it now still is the fact that the entertainment industry is not yet open to operate.
Okay.
And I think it's been overdue, and I hear many people are putting their voices out to make sure that at least they can be given an opportunity, just like they have done for the rest of the industries. If you go downtown, if you go in the parks, people are working. Why not the entertainment industry? So that's where we are.
Okay. That's as a recap right there, coming from Faisal Chiwewa, of course, giving us a recap of the cultural and creative industry space in Uganda and what needs to be done, who needs to do what, where, and how. And I think so far it's looking good that ever since we started the conversation, people seems to be picking up and actually looking into making sure that the industry gets back on its feet. Faisal, I want to take you straight to this part of the show, which is, what is a creative ecosystem and why do we need it in Uganda or in Africa, for example?
I will speak for Uganda because Africa is quite huge, even though we are, brothers and sisters, but we have so many different contexts in terms of how we operate, culturally, how we look at things, how we react to things. So if I were to trade to be in a culture space, I would trade for West Africa. Why? Because West Africa is one of the communities, as in its people are very social, they are very caring, they are very engaging, they are very supportive, they are very artistically mature, and it really makes it a little bit easier to operate in this environment because everyone, it's not really difficult to navigate. And when it comes to culture, for them, they all believe that it's part of their day-to-day life. It's not like us here where we have to talk about it, lobby for it, and even if you do so much talking, it's still difficult to be heard. Okay. So, but on the Ugandan context, I think the ecosystem here is still, challenged because of the many factors that we've been talking about as we've been in the previous episodes. Whereas it's important that all these systemic structures are put in place so that the industry could operate and work towards a sustainable future, I think that there is still a lot of bottlenecks that needs to be fixed, and that's not only on one level, but at so many different levels.
Yes.
Not only from the actors or the players or the industrial industry practitioners, but also from private sector, government, individuals. We all need to play a role and look at it in a way that we are able to contribute to the sustainability of the creative industries. So at the moment, there is no ecosystem here in Uganda, because nothing has been really thought and planned strategically to support that ecosystem. Okay. It's still bits and bytes. It's still a few aspects, a few individuals who have sacrificed and putting their lives online, taking the bullets and trying to make sure that things happen. But if we could all realize what we need to do as a people and look at the industry as a benefactor for all of us, I think it would be really, really significant that we start seeing this ecosystem come into life. But for now, we are just in bits and bytes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you've heard that one from Faisal. We are on the Creative Industry Talk tonight, rather this morning, depending on which part of the world where you are. We are talking about the industry space, and we're talking about the ecosystem of the creative, industry in Uganda, in Africa. And Faisal has talked about in Africa, and has also mentioned a bit of Ghana, and of course why we need it in this time, and of course in our life and in time and space. Of course, we are live on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. You go there and share far and wide. Please make sure that everybody who is a creative thinker, creative mind, is part of this conversation. Faisal, how can it help us to understand the support, help us and actually support the enterprise operating within the creative industry?
The support structure.
Yes.
I think it really depends. The creative industry is diverse.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, and within those within its diversity, there's a lot of different segments to that. So when you're talking about support, of course you can have an overall strategic approach to supporting the creative industry, but also you have to break it down depending on which specific disciplines or subsectors or subdivisions of it. When it comes to the performing arts, I would say music, dance, theater, film, you find that it is quite a huge undertaking if you're to invest in those or to support those performing arts. And if it also goes to the visual arts, where you find the film is still there, painters and videographers, photographers. It's also a huge undertaking to invest or support those sectors. So it would really be very useful. I think for me, what I always think of is that at the moment, we need to first have an overview of the industry as a whole. And understand where it is now and what it needs, what is there and what is missing. And then from that we can segment it and say, okay, within the film industry, who is doing what have they managed to achieve, where do they need help? Do they need help in capacity building? Do they need help in equipment? Do they need help in distribution or markets and stuff like that? So you direct the investment or you direct the support where it is needed. The same thing with film, with music. I think it's one of the most visible art form. People enjoy music, they enjoy Ugandan music, they listen to it all the time. And it's also making a lot of returns for those who have been able to stream their music and earn some digital royalties as well as copyright. So when it comes to supporting the music industry, I think it's also important to understand which kind of musicians do we have and what kind of support do they need. So you'll find that I've just had a conversation recently, last week actually, with one of the artists who is very popular, and I was asking him, who is distributing your music? And he was like, what is distribution? I'm like, okay.
Imagine a musician doesn't know what
exactly, and I'm like, you mean all these years, with all the music you have, you have no distributor? Where are you streaming? Like, you have to ask my producer. So it kind of showed to me that you might see a huge artist with a huge following, but not knowing what they are supposed to do with their following, with their content and stuff like that. So that kind of analysis gives us an idea of where do we need to support the industry. So I think before we even start saying this is the money, or the government has put 100 million into the creative industries, we need to first know where is that money going to go. Because if it just comes, of course, you know, it's like everything else. When you have money and you have no plan for it, you spend it and you don't earn anything from it. You find yourself losing your money. So I think it's important for the government, or for the one, whether it's supporting, whether it's a funder or an individual, to first analyze and say, okay, if I'm going to put in 100 million, where exactly is it going to go? And then that really gives us a cost benefit when it comes to supporting the industry.
Wow. Well, this is the Creative Industry Talk. We are discussing how do we manage partnerships internationally, locally, and of course, what kind of relationships do we need to have in our industry. And of course, the creatives makes things happen. You know, we're talking about coronavirus communication. We're using the creative minds to be able to communicate about the disease across the world. We are talking about culture, and culture plays a big role in trying to help our economy grow from point A to point B. And these are really important conversations to have. But are we set? Do we have, what kind of, you know, relationships and management do we need to have in place? And of course, Faisal Chiwewa and I are in the studio. Make sure you share that far and wide all across to all those people who are creative thinkers. If you're a creator of something that goes out, if you're a product that goes out, you need to be part of this conversation going forward. Otherwise, some people would make a decision that does not help you to grow forward. Faisal, is there a problematic mismatch between the current policy approaches to growth in the creative economy, and as well as the intentions and motivations of the individual creative practitioners that dominate the sector?
There's no policy, I would say. I think because we're talking about the creative industries, and what is there, I think now, is there are bits and bytes, as I talked about in the beginning. You find that there is a regulatory framework that is being proposed for film, specifically licensing and that stuff. And that's not even good enough, because it's very, you know, it's a one-way takeaway, you know, because what the government, and I think we talked about this last time, where the government is failing is always proposing regulations and putting policies or proposing policies without offering anything in them for the industry. And all the time they want to take, and I think that really makes it demotivating for the creative industries, for the practitioners. The same with I think now they are trying to do something for music, the same regulatory frameworks for music. It becomes very difficult for people to really feel comfortable and find the motivation to follow and fit into these regulations, because they are always directed to getting to a kind of control the industry rather than offer some solutions. I think we are past that era of always trying to think that you're going to, as a government, you'll control the content that comes out. It's never going to happen. Yes, you can control a few people. You can intimidate a few people, but it's always the creatives win. You know, always the content wins, because it will find its way. And even if you hide it, we've seen documentaries, we've seen music that was banned in the 90s or in the 900s and stuff like that, and it still comes out, you know, and people embrace it and they be like, why was it? And it becomes, you know, it becomes shameful. So the problem that is there at the moment is there is no goodwill, there is no interest in the sector rather than regulating it or controlling it. And that really demotivates most of the practitioners. They would like to have, you know, they would like to embrace. I don't think people don't like their government.
Yeah.
I don't think they do. But what happens is that when the government always shows them that we just want to take away from you, we just want to put you in a box, then people start being resistant. If they could do something like, you know, like what they have just done now, they're launching UGTube or YouGaTube.
And I are going to be talking about how do we manage relationships and of course partnerships all across internationally, globally, locally here. There's been a lot of talks about how our government, particularly in Uganda, just like any other government across Africa, only coming with laws that foster collecting money from creatives without helping the creatives to grow. And we've seen that happen in Uganda, where the laws are being put in place just to make sure money is picked, but we don't sort of like look at how do we develop the industry going forward. And that's the kind of discussion we're having here. How do we manage such partnerships locally, internationally, and as well as maintain the relationships? Stay right there. The Creative Industry Talk will be right back after the break. Welcome back to the program. My name is Eddie Okela, and this is the Creative Industry Talk. Today on the program, we are talking about how to manage your relations and partnerships all across the globe. And of course, how do you get them? And that is the part of the show we are going into. Before we went for a break, we were talking about cultural and creative industry. How do we manage? What is the ecosystem like? Is it conducive for all of us? And of course, Faisal, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Faisal, last week we had Rasbi Sali on the show, and he kept talking about, yes, the legend himself. And he kept talking about some of the things that needs to be done for him, the thinking. Yeah. And the last question I ask you, whether we are problematic or there is a mismatch between the current policy and the approaches to growth in the creative economy. Yes, we see that, for example, in Uganda, we are seeing a lot of people, individual people, posing themselves as the only people who have the right to do things. And so policies are coming, but policy seems to be tagged to a few people and few individuals who are trying to get things happening. Many of them are actually not really creative minds. Okay. They're just business people. How do we harmonize this position going forward? Because that's part of managing our relationships.
I think as we said earlier on, what the mistakes that we are doing as a people, because I'm not saying, I don't like putting all the blame on government, because it's not entirely their responsibility, but it's our all responsibility. I think the problem that we are making is doing things without knowing why are we doing them. And as I said before we went for the break, the government puts up policies without understanding what are these policies for. And there is no way, and there is no government I know outside ours that always takes from its people without giving back. So if you want to entice the creative industries and you want to give them an opportunity to thrive and to be sustainable, you cannot just say, for example, like the Media Council. Media Council charges people to show films. Even if you make your own film, do you know how much a film costs to make here? Okay, low budget films, maybe some people invest in 10 to 15 million. And then for them to screen that film, they have to pay Media Council, I think 150,000. So I asked them, Media Council, what do you give these people? Do you advertise for them? Do you bring in people? What do you give them? They give you that 150,000 for
this return on this one.
Yes. Yeah, so what are you giving back? And then on that 150,000, they say, oh, we are going to watch the movie and then approve it. Seriously, seriously. So, and then, the thing that when you also calculate, the person has spent this money to make this film, they always have dates. You know how it is in the industry. And then you calculate how many people are going to come in for them to be able to pay for that 150. Films are normally watched at 5,000 to 10,000. So, it's a very, very big rip-off. Whereas, if they could say, if you have a Ugandan film that you've produced, first of all, they have to recognize the effort you've put in. The effort you've put in, the investment you've put in. Then they can say, we are not going to charge you, but we are going to give you a platform so that we can advertise. If the film is good, we'll watch it. If it's good, we'll put it as one of the products of Uganda to the international market. Push it out, let people encourage people to watch it, or the international community. But no, they just want to take away from you. So these things are demoralizing. These things are making people fail to invest in the industry. And if they continue like that, then it will be really difficult. So when they come up with these film regulatory policies, they come up with these music regulatory policies, it becomes very, very clear that they are not interested in the development of the industry. And that means that even us who are investing in those areas find it difficult to invest, because knowing that all the work is going to be done for nothing. So this is where we are, and I think it's important that we look at the industry as a whole. Yes, it's okay for people who are doing a lot. There's a lot of people who are doing a great deal of work, and I respect that, and I think it's a very big effort. But as a country, we have to understand the entire industry, how it works. And I've been saying this so many times, we are not going to make good investments. We are not going to put in good support to the industry if we don't know where the industry is. We don't know where the industry is. We are just making blind investments. We need to know, where do we stand? Who is doing what? What have they invested? Where do we need to add to fill in the gaps? And I think if we know, it doesn't take much to understand. We just need to do a very proper analysis of the industry across the country, know who is doing what in Mbale. There's a lot of things happening, but they are very disconnected. And once we know that,
not sort of like a group or a platform to manage some of these relationships, or even a place to run.
There's no structure. There's no structure in most of these. Don't know what they call it, the theory of change.
Yeah.
And the theory of change is where we know that a government, and I always tell that people like. When donors say, what is your theory of change? I'm like, I cannot have a theory of change because I'm not government. The government has to give me their overall wish. Where do they want the creative industries to go? You know what I mean?
Yes.
If they say, we want the Ugandan creative industries to be here in the next 20 years, then Bayimba can come and can say, how can I contribute to this vision?
Yeah.
You know, how can we share this vision as an industry? Government directs us. We can add ourselves. Okay, I'm going to invest in artists. I'm going to invest in spaces. I'm going to invest in systems. I know because I'm contributing to an overall vision. But there's no vision. So it becomes really difficult for anyone to start coming in. And it's quite simple. They just have to set up a very good think tank team, look around, multidisciplinary, look at the sector as a whole, create some analysis, come up with solutions and resolutions and recommendations, and then from that we can start feeding in as a people. Otherwise we'll keep on doing things, but they are not adding up because our effort is just a drop in the ocean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is where we need to be.
Well, I want you to put that question up there so people can participate. What is your say? What are you saying? What's your comment? Kisses or disses? We want to know if what we're discussing here is really something that is at the core of you as a person who is creating. And when we talk about creative people, we're not talking about just a musician. We're not talking about just the filmmakers. We're talking about photographers. We're talking about visual artists. We're talking about people who design posters, the things that we need. Put the question up, and I want to read it for everyone once again, and then just make everybody know what we're talking about. I want to put that question up right there so that people can check it out. And that question there, the topic is the creative industry. We're talking about managing relationships, right? Or relations and partnerships. Faisal, there have been a lot of talk about individuals within the industry itself. I know government is not doing what they're supposed to do, or they're trying, but maybe perhaps the government also, people who are inside the government do not know what to do and how to do it. Because a lot of the policies that are coming is about, it will help us collect more taxes, it will help us put this one, it will put this one. But we're saying it's like milking the cow where you're not feeding the cow. Okay, and then a lot of these policies that are coming also is about control measures. We want to control, how people say this or what people do this and how people go about this. And we're saying that when it comes to communications, when there's a problem, you need artists. Take for example, Bad Black was being used during COVID-19.
She's an artist. Oh yes. Yeah, she sang a song.
Yeah, we don't know whether she sang a song or whatever, but she said, I'm a creative mind. And she said that this is my heart, and so she was being used. A lot of people were very concerned about it. Some people say she's not a creative person, she's not an artist, she shouldn't have gotten the money. But she pushed the messages out there that we needed to be done. And these are some of the people we are looking at today. The artists remain home, and they would always sing songs about certain things like the pandemic, what we're having right now, what we're dealing with right now. But there are the individuals who try to control. We're having a lot of situations happening right now where the young creatives are crying that people are coming and lying to them and signing. Because lack of knowledge, they come and sign this small person out. The creative doesn't know what to do, and then they go and even copyright their product.
Years old, I started in theater, community theater. We talk about issues of community diseases, cholera, diarrhea, and we did theater to sensitize people. We're very relevant needed in certain communities.
Yes.
But is it because of the art, or is it because of the money that is available from a donor to do that kind of work? I think that's for me where I find the disadvantage. I'm always telling artists that you cannot just present yourself because you've been paid by USAID or whatever to sing a song about the war. We've had artists in the North who became superstars because of singing songs of peace. Peace, 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 Connie what, the North peace. And then when the peace came, they became irrelevant because they didn't know what else to sing about. They were only about peace songs, and that is a very disadvantage, a big disadvantage to the artists. But it's also something they make a choice to, you know. So when it comes to managing relations, you realize also where sometimes they go wrong. Like the Bad Black issue worked, you know, it really worked. I think when I saw it, and I was like, this was a very significant move for the Ministry of Health to do that kind of commercial for the ladies of the night. And I think it worked very well to motivate them to get off the, you know, be careful about the virus. But also it was not managed well. That's why it backfired.
Because there was a cry of payment and she came out.
So it backfired, and it didn't backfire in terms of the message. No, the message was good and it stayed, but the management of it, the relationship between the ministry and the person who did the ad was very not managed well. That's why it went viral when she came out looking for her money. So how do we manage our relations? How do we get to this? I think one of the things that I think now digging into the topic, like we've had, you know, we've had opportunities as an industry, that there has been an interest of people who have been supporting the industry, at least for the past 15 years. We've had donors, international donors, who have been genuinely supporting the industry. And those who have been lucky, like Baimba and other organizations like Maisha, like 32 Degrees, you know, Afriat, they have really had an opportunity to leverage this support. And some of those people are still there. They're still being supportive. But when it comes to the country as a whole, I think where we are missing, because we can see, for example, what other countries have done. Look at Tanzania. 10 years ago, the government of Tanzania didn't have a budget for culture. And they were asked what can they do. They were like, no, we have other priorities. That during the Kikwete time, they said we have other priorities. But if you want to support culture, can you directly support? So they asked the EU to directly support culture from their own budget without sending the money to the government. And the EU was very happy. They were like, okay, how much can we put in? So they started with €1 million, and then they added into €2 million. That's why culture and the arts in Tanzania are very, very vibrant. And also, don't forget that there is also very big benefit whereby the industry itself is very sustained by its own community. Tanzanians are very supportive of their own, so it becomes much more easier and clear for the artists to work in this environment. And I think here in Uganda it could also work. We've had a lot of conversations with our foreign funders and partners, and asked them, what can we do to make sure that there is an increase in supporting the creative industries? And they're like, your government has to make it a priority. Not a priority for them to support it because we know they don't have the money, but a priority in terms of asking the other funders to invest money in it directly, so that they don't have to bother about it, or they can do the little that they can do, but the international community will be welcoming them to ask them, guys, can you put a certain budget that is going to support the creative industries? It's a very possible venture that can be done here in Uganda.
Well, Faisal, we want to ask you a question before we go for a break. We're due for a break. This is the Creative Industry Talk. My name is Eddie Okello, Faisal Siwewa here in the studio, and we're talking about managing relations and international partnerships for the creative industry, and the industry as industry that is responsible for our consumption, to say the least, and our product being channeled out there. An artist will design a poster for a product that has to go out there and communicate about that product to go out there. You buy soda because somebody designed the logo that is on that soda to identify whether it is Pepsi or Coca-Cola, or it is Riam Cola, or it is a Kiri Kiri soda, whatever we're calling it. That is the work of an artist. And you listen to the advert coming out communicating about that product because Eddie Okello's voice is being used, or Jafar Remo Amin is being used, or Katolo Guama is being used, or Annington Bujingo making fun out of it. That is a creative mind communicating about the product we consume, the product that we use in our homes every other day. But These are people who are often not looked at as people who are significant in our society. This is a sector that we don't take very seriously. An architect is a creative mind. The building that is put there is because somebody designed it, right? And of course, when you want to buy a car, that car you're driving, the difference between a Premio and Mercedes-Benz, artists are behind it. Engineering is part of art. So it is broader than what we're saying here, and we're saying that relationship needs to be managed. Okay, and the partnership between the artist, the designer, and government needs to be managed. That's what we're talking about here. Faisal, how do we get to have international partners and relations? What is the process, first of all, to start with?
I think, of course, it depends on at what level of engagement you are as an individual, or as an organization, or as a government, or the local government. There are so many opportunities that are out there that are, leveled. For example, there is a lot of interesting creative processes that are being directed to authorities, like for example KCCA, and this is what they call like city twinning, twinning of cities, where you can, let's say Kampala City Council Authority can twin with Brussels, and they can choose in what areas they want to collaborate in. It can be also in the art in the city, art in public space, and I've always got some calls and I direct them to the KCCA team to look into those kind of areas, whereby if you go to a city like Brussels and you want to, you can enjoy art everywhere, in public spaces, in museums, in galleries, in concert halls. There is art. You can't miss out on a day. You can go to a small pub, there is a concert, a small performance, a jazz club. There's a lot to offer. And I think our cities can also learn from that. So if those areas of partnerships can be cultivated and brought to life, then our cities can also start to get into a supportive structure whereby our city becomes more vibrant and also collaborating with others. So that's one level. They're also getting government partnership, like as I talked earlier. If the government is not able to support its industry, it can ask others to come in. I know some of the donors have here like basket funds, like they do that. They spend millions and millions. I don't think if an embassy like the UK gives Uganda 400 million pounds a year, and you tell them give us 100,000 a year for the arts, I don't think they can refuse. If the government wants it to happen, it can happen. So cultivating that relationship and say, okay, we are going to put a fund, and every embassy or every government that foreign supports us is going to give us 100,000 euros each year to put into this fund. In 10 or 5 years, you'll find that there is enough money that can run and develop the creative industries for a longer time. So that's also another process. When it comes to organizations like Bayimba, of course, it's also a process whereby you have to cultivate people, you have to meet people. We've talked about this in one of our editions, how to get in funding. You have to find out who is interested in what you're doing, find out in what areas of interest they are, what do they need, and then you follow through with an application and you find that they can support you, and then you can continue with what you're doing. So it's all at different levels. Some are more specific in terms of what do I want as an individual. I want to make a film. You look for the film fund. You find organizations that are supporting that. If you are an organization, you look for institutions that are supportive of your kind of work. If it's authorities, there are so many opportunities that our country, our people, our citizens can benefit from if they are interested people, if they are interested parties. But it turns out that most of us are on our own, and we always care about who we are, or what are we going to eat, how do I stop renting and build my own house, rather than thinking and saying, I want to contribute to the growth of the sector. I want to be part of a new generation of thinkers that are going to be contributing to the development of the industry. Like Huntington Bujingo is doing, he's really doing a lot of great work, and he's championing new initiatives, and I'm very proud of him. And I think it's one of the key people in the industry that are moving things, and they need our support, and we need to work together to make sure that they achieve their goals.
Wow. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Faisal and I are going to be answering 2 or 3 questions coming from you on how can we make our cultures better, how can we package our culture and sell it You know, if you have a culture of, you know, selling malakwang or cooking malakwang, how can we package malakwang and sell to the world? If you have a culture that eats ishagwe, how can we package it and sell it? What kind of partnership management do we need going forward? Stay right there. Creative Industry will be right back after the break. Eddie Okello, Faizo Chiwewa. Welcome back to the Creative Industry Talk. My name is Eddie Okello, right here at the city, or in the city, or within the city of Kampala, depending on where you are and what you're doing and which part of the world you're located. But welcome to the program. And of course, Faizo Chiwewa and I are discussing how do we manage relations and partnerships internationally and locally here going forward for the creative industry. Faizo, we will start with the question coming in from the one Ediwato Chom. It says, what are some of the legal issues that are likely to arise in these international partnerships, which oftentimes involve people from different legal jurisdictions? How can legal creatives deal with them?
Okay. Legal issues, I mean, it depends.
Yes.
Definitely, their parties agree to certain things.
Yeah.
Conditions are always part of the negotiations.
Yes.
And once you agree to those conditions, you have to, comply. And if you don't, definitely there is always a penalty or an issue to deal with. And I think we're not really talking about mega. There are so many different levels of issues to deal with.
Yeah.
For example, if we're talking about a production like Queen of Katwe, you're talking about tax legalities, you're talking about contracts of international actors, or where do they sign? The film is made here in Uganda, but they live in New York or
Yes.
California. That's a whole different ball game.
Yes.
It's a whole different narrative, and
I think that's where Ochom is coming from.
But I think when it comes to institutional support, contracts and legal issues, these are more like small, negotiations whereby I get $100,000 and I'm supposed to spend it on ABCD, and I have to account for that. That's different from having a mega production coming in. And I remember when I was when they were doing Queen of Katwe, because I was on the board of Maisha, I had to have a conversation with the Mirror on the tax contracts, because then we had to hire a lawyer who was helping them to legalize, to pay all the taxes for the production, which was a lot of money that they put paid the Ugandan government for making that film here. So there, depending on what level of engagement you are, the legalities are always defined, and I think both parties that are engaging have to really, comply. It happens every day, but I think it's not really so difficult if you really are on the same, on the same level with the person you're engaging with, and if there is any fault, for example, like Global Fund, that's a big deal, because it was money meant for a certain activity, and it was swindled. So that's really different. So we can really have conversations on the legalities depending on the context of the partnership we are talking about.
Okay.
If it's an individual small grant, it's different. If it's an organization, different. If it's a government to government, it's different. If it's a big commercial multi-entertainment, it's different. So these are, you can't really put them all in one.
I think what Ochom is talking about here, Faisal, is oftentimes we go to sign contracts. Artist, I'm a photographer, and I've taken this photograph from here, and I'm signing a contract with a person in the US or in Europe, and then the law, the contract is signed, says for all, in case of any arbitration, it will be done according to the laws of the United States. Yes, but you live here, the contract is signed. How does that work? I mean, the product is from here. How does that work?
I mean, that's a thing that you have to negotiate. It's a partnership. You cannot just say, I have contracts whereby if I arbitrate or whatever, I breach them. I'm going to be judged in the United States. I have those contracts for specific productions or for specific concepts. I have also, I cannot sign a contract.
How do you deal with it?
No, because you have to, depending on who you like. For example, I have a contract with Orchard Sony, and Orchard is registered in the US. So everything, if anything that we do wrong as Bayimba, as representatives of Orchard, we are judged in the US. And I agree to that because I know I have to follow through with my agenda. I have to make sure that I comply with those laws, and you never know, things happen, but I am aware and prepared to deal with that case when it comes. But if it's something that is about Bayimba's work and how it's supposed to be, that I'm not going to just sign every contract that is judging me in the US. You have also to negotiate, like, guys, wait a minute. That's why we have lawyers. That's why we have counsel. And I think if you are into the business and someone is telling you, I want your work, I'm taking your painting, I'm gonna, and if you fail, if it's not insured, if it gets lost, we deal with you in the US, then are you able to do that? No, you cannot just agree to certain things. So you have to seek counsel. Before you sign that contract, you have to have a lawyer. You have to understand every clause. We don't read contracts, and many times we fall short because we fail to see certain clauses that are very, very important. And some of the time, those very important clauses are really, really, really very small. And if you don't understand the language, you need to find someone who can help you.
There's this moment where people often sign contracts, artists, creative people, they see money. If they have been, like, COVID-19 is going to happen, and you're going to find there was a discussion 2 days ago really about artists paying DJs. I think it was being run by Mr. DJ and other people saying paying DJs. I think it started by APAS. APAS said that if all the websites that are playing my music without paying, please put them down. I want my money back. If you can't play my money. So it was a question of where this music that is being played by this website or uploaded by this website, are they on contract? Did they sign a contract? And if they signed a contract, is the website following what they are supposed to do, or they are not? What sort of contract do they?
I think there is a very big challenge. As an artist, you cannot just wake up and say, everyone who is playing my music without paying me, take them down. What structure did you put for your music to be monitored? You know, it's very simple. You are wrong because you didn't put a structure. And if you did put a structure, then that structure you put in place is not strong enough to monitor your music where it is being played so that you can get the money that you're worth. Isn't that clear?
Sure.
I think also, on the other hand, those that put people's music online without authorization and consent, they are also wrong. They're on the wrong side of the law. So I think these two people have to be morally right to do certain things, and also the artists have to put some structures in. We are at the moment having a conversation with UPRS, and because we want to take on as Bayimba on behalf of Orchard to take on their catalog, but then they find that they had a contract which was lasting for 15 years with another company, which I will not mention, which was not very clear. And that company was very funny because the contract they signed with that company was stated that the UPRS will never sue that company for any issue concerning what. And I was like, how dare you?
Trump should be able to give us comment.
How can you sign such a contract that they will never be sued? And if they are to be sued, they need to give them a 8 months notice
of intention to sue.
Exactly. and if they need to audit them, they need to give them they need to audit them within their office where they are, in their country of
country of origin,
their official main office, and they have to foot the bills of all those people, and they have to give them 12 months notice. And I'm like, who signs such a contract? So I think it's important when we are dealing with these legalities, international relations, we really have to be careful and seek counsel. It doesn't hurt to seek, even if you don't have money to afford a lawyer, you can ask a friend. Someone somewhere knows a lawyer. You can ask a friend, can you just read for me through this? What is it saying? And most of the time also when I'm signing contracts with artists, I encourage them, but please read through. One time I was having a contract with signing with Bebe Cool, and he told me, let me just write. But there are so many things to consider. Like no. So I was also proud of him because he was like, no, this is what I understand.
Yes,
I'll do this, and it's a negotiation because it's not a one way. You negotiate, you pull strings. You might have a 20-page contract, yet the artist wants only a few sentences. In a few sentences, and they're committed. So it works like that. It's a negotiation. You can't just let it go.
Okay, we are talking about managing relations. Please put the topic of discussion up there so that people can participate. Team, and I also want to read one more question here, which says, I think this is Ras Bissal is saying, thank you, Faizo. Work on the mic. I think it's breaking. Rasta, thank you very much for that. We will fix that. And I have a question here coming from somebody. Eddie Okila, thank you very much. I stay up late waiting for Faizo to come today because I'm an artist. I live and work in Europe, but I find it difficult in Uganda and most part of Africa that artists don't even invest in having a legal representation. Even me, I used to be the same. I used to go through the same. But now I've learned the hard way that where I'm in Europe, everything is done according to a contract. Everything is done according to the contract. Even the clothes I wear, it's on contract. The shoes I wear, on contract. The microphone I use is on contract. So Ugandans need to make sure they learn how to do things according to the book. We really need to have this conversation going, and I'm glad that this conversation is going online right now. I hope that there are many Ugandan artists and also creative minds following. This one says, I'm a photographer, a professional photographer in the US. When I was in Uganda, I used to just take photos and that's it. But I've learned that in the US here where I am, every photo I take is actually paid for. And they have royalties to these photographs. So this is important that Ugandans begin to get into it. Idiwato Choma says, thanks Faizo for eloquently highlighting legal issues. The issues you raise are a good area for creatives to be mindful of. Other issues can include copyright and payment terms that must be taken on. That's a compliment coming from Idiwato Ochom who asked the question. Thank you very much, Ochom. Ladies and gentlemen,
just a quick one on which I know at the time. Yeah, yes. I think it's you know, the contract thing. People really take it for granted.
Yeah.
And I've also been sued. You know, one artist, I don't know, photographer sued me for using a photo in our catalog, which I didn't know. I thought it was our photo because it was in our archives, and then we used it on one of our catalog, and then we got a notice. And it was asking for 100 million. Dude, that was crazy. But I think it's really important. Life runs on contracts in the entertainment industry. If you don't really know how to deal with it, I mean, even in Europe, you have a phone, it's a contract. You have a house, everything is on contract. So why do we ignore these ideas that we need to? And it's very helpful because it helps you. You know, for sometimes some people ask me, why do you have your staff sign contracts every year? It helps me to fire them if I don't have. I mean, if your contract is terminated at the end of the year, I'm not going. I mean, we are not going to argue. It's the end. It's not renewed. But if you're doing a good job, then it's renewed, and I sign it every year. So it helps you to forego some incidences.
Wow. Well, Faisal, we are going to bring this down. If you have a question or comment, please drop it up there. We're going to read it. And of course, please make sure that when you're thinking about selling Atapa or selling a Rolex, we have certain, you know, understandings of how this is going to manage. You know, the Mexicans have the Mexican, you know, plate of breakfast. Ugandans have the Rolex. They're more or less the same.
The Katogo.
And we have the Katogo as well. And we have the Luombo that can be packaged very well, but we need to be able to manage the relationships. So talking of it, Matoke has been cooperated in the US, and how does it make you feel, you from the central Uganda where the Matoke originates from, but somebody has cooperated Matoke in the US? For example, Uganda Airlines was cooperated in the US. How does that even work?
I mean, it's opportunities. People find gaps and fill them. To be honest, I think, you know, if you have this great venture that you're running and you've failed to legalize it and someone does it, you can't blame them. Of course, it's being opportunistic from the other end, but it's also your fault as a person that you're not able to safeguard your initiative. So I don't blame the person who incorporates Matoke, whatever they are. They might have had their reasons, and you know, there are also people who have bought domains of governments and they sell them to them. And like, you know, someone can say .ug, and they buy it, and then the government of Uganda wants to use it, or you know, and they're like, oh, it is sold. Then someone says, give me 100 million, I'll give it back. You know, it has happened. So just take care of your legal stuff.
Okay. Well, the topic of discussion today is managing relations and international relationships, and of course, in the creative industry. Faisal, we are hastening to the close. Our time is really up, and I want to have you answer two questions as we close the show. One, who are some of the strategic, what are some of the strategic relations and partnerships one needs to look out for in the creative arts?
There are many, I think. And as we've spoken about quite different ways, I come from a management point of view. Like as an organization, my responsibility is to make sure that Bayimba is financially healthy and able to achieve its goals. So definitely I look out all the time for where can the money come from. But I'm also starting to get away from that because I don't want to get into this syndrome of always looking for money, which I have been, because I've been supported 98% throughout all these years, working with donor money. I want to start venturing into business, but still at the core of Bayimba, doing what we are doing best. But we cannot survive with funding all the time. And I think, whereas it's clear and globally known that the culture and the arts will never be sustainable, can never stand on its own. It always has to be subsidized. That is true. But again, we cannot just always survive on subsidies. We need to figure out how to also raise our own income. So I'm drifting away from that narrative of being funded all the time to also start looking at culture as a business, as an entrepreneur, as a sustainable initiative, but also to safeguard my own institution that I have built for so long. So when it comes to who do we need, who are the strategic people, we need government definitely to be supportive in terms of regulating and giving us some conducive working environment. You know, not these all the time pulling strings or looking at where is the threat. It's not always about the threat. It's not always about insecurity or, you know, or fighting with the government, but also look at how do we support those who are there. How do we encourage those who want to come? How do we attract new entrants to be in the industry? So government has to play its role. Okay. And it's not only about money, and I think we are not going to ask for money. We are all asking for a conducive environment where we are comfortable, we are supportive. You know, for example, since the lockdown in March last year up to now, the creatives have been shut down. But the URA has never stopped to ask for their
the taxes.
The taxes.
Still sending
they send, and you have to pay. And where is this money coming from? If no one is organizing an event, because all these events organizing companies are reliable to pay taxes, to file for taxes, and then you find that they're not working, but they have to continue paying. There has never been a relief or saying, okay guys who are in the entertainment industry or who are running creative projects, we are not going to charge you this year till we get back to business. So that is a balance that we have to think through. How do you coordinate your financing as a government? How do you look at your industry? So we need the government, we need our private sector to not be only selective. They have always been very selective and bribing, I would say that. Because they always look at where's the quick return on the investment, who is popular, rather than looking at, you know, and I think we talked about last time that you need to look at the industry as for the future. You don't only look at, okay, who is the trending artist now? Let me put in my 100 million. But what are you doing to cultivate, to safeguard, to develop skills for the next 10 years of artists? Because you will need those artists, unless if you're planning to shut down. But there are companies that are not going to shut down, and they're not investing in the creative, yet they can, because they have the money and they can plan for it. So let's try to think around how can we help each other.
Like I said, artists are very pivotal in communication of the product that we consume in our homes today. Telecoms use artists to, you know, communicate about the products they're having. If you look at it, Opolot, for example, the new ad with MTN, it has an artist with the sound behind it. It's produced by an artist. You know, the sound that coming out of that is produced by an artist. So it's important that we actually look at these people as a very essential, you know, people in our society today that is going to help us move forward. Faisal, finally, I want to take you to how do we get to engage and manage them? These relationships that we're talking about, these partnerships internationally, locally that we're talking about. Can you summarize it there?
I think it's a two-way. For me, my battles now with the international partners is understanding my needs, our needs. And I think when it comes to where do you want to put the investment and how do you want to, you know, continue being in a partnership like this, because when someone gives you money, definitely, like Peter Mbanda last time said, if you get money from someone, there is always a condition to it. But is that condition in line with what you need? I think now the confusion with the international partnerships and management is the reality on the ground, the needs on the ground, as well as the information that is out there that is imagined or consumed or kind of created as the reality on the ground when it's not. So for us now, I would say, and I would like to say this loud, the creative industries now in Uganda need investment, and not investment in only human capital, which is also relevant, but we need investment in spaces and systems, and those are not cheap ventures to get into. So if you are interested in supporting the creative industries in Uganda, there are three things to look at. We need to focus on skills, we need to focus on spaces where people produce stuff, and we also need to focus on systems that are going to sustain the industry as it grows. So those three areas should be the focus for investment.
Okay. Thank you very much, Faisal, for that. And we have come to the end of the show. I would like to read for you one more comment coming here from Rasbi Sali, the legend himself.
The legend.
Yes, the legend Rasbi Sali was on the show last week. He's an investor in 2 events.
And we're having him next week, right?
And we're having him next week, yes. I think.
Mm.
And as I always mention, creatives are only good at creating, but failed at managing themselves. It is high time we employ real management, not just booking agents and messengers to manage our affairs.
Yeah, and he's right. I mean, even us, we look at ourselves.
That's coming from Rasbi Sali.
Yeah, it's very right, because sometimes I ask people that when we invest a lot in the creatives, but we invest in training artists, but we don't invest in training managers. You know, people who are going to manage those artists. That's why we find that we have a pool of great artists, amazing artists, and very few managers who are able to understand the theory and the methodology on how to manage these artists. So we need to also direct the investment. But that goes back to where we started. Do we have an understanding of the challenges, the bottlenecks, the gaps that are within the creative industries? Because if we do understand that, then we will be able to direct our investment where it's needed. So we see artists, we enjoy listening to them, but we don't know the problems they're having, that they don't have people who are able to push them. Let the artist be the artist. Let them focus on creating content. Then let there be a team of people who are able to guide him, to take him through with this content, so that they can achieve something, we achieve something, and everyone is benefiting.
Wow. Faisal, thank you very much for coming to the show.
Welcome.
And thank you very much, everybody out there, for being part of the show, Growing Bigger and Better. Creativity is part of our life, and we dream, live, eat creativity every single morning. Faisal and I are just giving you a preamble of what you need to do, and you need to be part of doing it better, growing far with whatever you're doing. But also think first before you act. People, look at what you're doing and look for people who will help you to grow forward, and don't be in a hurry to do it fast. Don't be in a hurry to be in a fast lane. You know, slow down, because creativity requires that you have good partners to move forward, locally, internationally, like Faisal and I have been talking about here. Please make sure that's part of your going forward in 2021. Faisal, your parting shot in summary?
I'm very grateful for the fact that we are having an opportunity to talk about the things which are very relevant for us in the sector, for the stakeholders who are working with. And I think we need to continue this narrative and pick up a few things that we can really take on and achieve. Otherwise, we'll continue talking, but we need to make some actions and then be able to move the industry forward.
Thank you very much, Faisal, and thank you very much, everyone, for coming and for being part of the creative industry going bigger and better. Diwato Chom, Rasbi Sali, and everyone, Dennis in Australia, and all the people who are sending your questions and your comments. We love to say thank you to you. And until next week, Edio Killer, Faisal Chiwewa, Creative Industry Talk has come to an end.